Hi.
Hello! Hi everybody, how is everybody doing? Welcome back from the new year. We are the Foxhole development team. I am HB, this is Mark and Matt. How have everybody been? How is everything?
Happy New Year, I guess.
Yeah.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy Merry Christmas, because I was not there on the latest dev stream with you and Alcas.
Yeah, that was a special holiday stream. We want to keep the tradition going because last year I know Matt held down the fort with a stream that he did over the holidays too. So this year we kind of wanted to do the same, and holidays was really cool. I was glad that we didn't have a lot of time to come up with the events over the holidays. A lot of it kind of came together the last minute, but I'm glad we did do something because we've always said that we want that to be like a yearly thing, right? And there's going to be many more years to come. So
yes, absolutely.
Hopefully next year we can change things up a little bit more for the holiday event. It changed a bit this year, but some of it was a bit more of the same. I think the holiday, the Let Us Know event, it like finished really quickly in like 1 or 2 hours.
So what was, just for anybody who didn't make it, what was involved?
So basically you spawned, so it was a Saturday war, and it was a war games, and you would spawn with a bunch of snowballs in your inventory, and they were like as powerful as HE grenades, but you could throw them at range, right?
That's funny.
You could throw them pretty far, so it ended up finishing really quickly, which was kind of funny. But apparently, I heard it was fun. So
the snowballs were actually really fun to make. I remember it was the first year of our development, I think, and you're just like, hey, how long would it take you to make snowballs?
Yeah.
And it was a fun time to make them.
Right.
But
we did have to fix them up. They didn't just work out of the box anymore.
Yeah, I think the code was a little bit too old for that.
Right.
Fun fact, the snowballs were the basis of the HE grenades. If you remember, when we talked about the HE grenades, you were like, "Oh, we already made the snowball."
Oh, right.
Because it explodes on impact
right away. Yeah. That's true.
So HEs are just really explosive snowballs.
Yeah, and so it's the new year now. We're working on some pretty cool stuff. A
lot of things
we're
actually.
Working on something pretty big. Right?
I think all three of us are working on really large.
So if you haven't heard about the One World revamp, we're gonna be talking about it a whole lot in this stream. That's all we're gonna be talking about for the next while. It's our only focus right now. We're sort of like dropped everything else, and we're just working on nothing but the One World revamp at this point. So hopefully the next update we'll see some parts of that, but we'll get into some of that more a little later. Maybe we'll just start with some highlights from the community.
Absolutely, yeah. We have so much to talk about because last time the last community highlights, I was not there on the dev stream because it was just a special Christmas one. So I kind of like mix and match the one that was already posted, like community highlights number 24. That was pretty much a special Christmas highlight, and the new one, which is the 25th. So I wanted to start with some of the very, very, very cool art from the 24th community highlights, the Christmas one, Christmas holidays, and all that entails.
There's so much. Can I go over to this now?
Oh yeah. I thought it was already there. Sorry.
There was so much cool stuff since we haven't had a stream. So I don't think we're gonna be able to show it all, right?
No.
So there's like a lot. You'll have to see the community.
We're only skimming the surface,
this is like,
to be honest.
And this is a big spotlight that I'm bringing, but there's so much. If you guys haven't had a chance to look at the community highlights, the latest one that is posted, not even the one that hasn't not gone yet, or like the 24th, do take a look at it because I was blown away by the quality of everything, videos and images. Everything was like really, really top notch. I know that I'm kind of like a broken record. I say the same thing over and over again, but the quality is kind of look at these images. Like look at the quality of the drawing, of the composition, of the painting. The one by Satorin. I don't know how to pronounce his name or her name. Sorry, but the 82DK one. The painting is so good.
Yeah, the 82DK Christmas card, maybe.
It looks really, really good. The one on the left of the screen. And then, of course, there are funny ones and there are just heartwarming ones, like the one by Lurkas, the Happy Holidays. Anyway, if you have a chance, please check it out. It's really worth it.
Yeah, I think this is like we also highlighted some of these on the last stream because they were.
Oh, you did, like, cause
just that good, yeah.
In this one, it's something that's coming up. This was an event. I don't know if there's audio. I know you can mute the audio, by the way.
I don't know if there's audio.
Yeah, just mute the audio right away if you can. This is an event that UBGE organized. It was a big event organized by UBGE.
With dolphins.
With this is a meme that is a known thing online.
Okay.
And they have been planning this for months. So thank you for Leo, thank you for Moitão for all the work that they did. I wanted to showcase their event. There were other events, don't get me wrong, but I want to showcase there because it was a special Christmas thing, New Year's Christmas thing, and they did put a lot of heart and passion in that. And this is just like a compilation of all the moments. If you don't speak Portuguese, it's gonna be a little bit harder, but they're like, the guy, whoever did the edit of this video, like, it is so spot on. Like, the music choices are great, and like the memes in the middle.
That's really
cool.
So,
muito obrigado a todos os jogadores brasileiros. Carinho especial a vocês. And it was really, really, really nice to see. Some of it might not be that safe for work. I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. Keep the events coming, guys. We are always happy to help you. There's more. Again, this is gonna be on the 25th.
How to get this thing back into full?
I'll just do that.
Yeah, there you go.
No, not back to full screen.
There you go.
F11. Isn't it?
Maybe I just read. Okay.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Some more community highlights. These are cool. These are just some stupid things that and I wanted to highlight these because these are the kind of jokes that can only exist in our game because they're sort of meta jokes about our game, about our community. So the one on the left is a Turon Rabbits comic about like the clans themselves, and on the ones on the right, they're like small jokes about things in our game, some idiosyncrasies about our game. It's really, really cool. There are more of those as well in the 25th that is coming up that Crazy Flying Chicken is finishing up. By the way, he's doing a goddamn good job. I gotta be honest, if you guys have any...
There's gonna be, so that new highlights post is gonna be coming soon. So
it's gonna be coming soon.
Yeah.
I just looked over it, like Crazy Flying Chicken was finishing it. I looked over it, make sure that like I could pick some of the coolest stuff for our dev stream. It's gonna be some nice, neat stuff, a lot of cool jokes. And the last thing that came on the very last minute were some of these pixel art. The one on the left by Regular Booba is actually one that is on the 24th. It's a Christmas one.
That one on the right.
But the one on the right, Patchouli just sent it to me.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It is this colonials gearing up with shotguns. Look at the quality of it. I know that Mark has a problem with pixel art, but when you see pixel art like that...
Well, it's kind of funny because this is the second one.
Yeah.
Right? And it's slowly turning me into a fan of
Yes.
pixel art.
Yes.
I don't like pixel art usually, but this is turning me into a fan, which is kind of really cool.
Thank you, Patchouli.
Kind of reminds me of like a Sierra game, like an old like Foxhole Sierra game, right?
Man, this is just top
Foxhole
quality.
adventure game is what it kind of reminds me of. So that's really cool.
I really like this kind of down moments of like downtime that are captured in like art because it's really easy to get a big like flashbang when you have like a tank battle, but it's really hard to capture like the atmosphere of something in like a quiet moment. And I think it was Patchouli the one who did the other one as well, the campfire one.
Yeah.
Both of those are like excellent examples of like atmosphere and mood, and like I think in a weird way like the things that like we've tried to capture in terms of like the game itself. So
Yeah,
I think it's a
yeah.
good like distillation
is.
of like.
Well, because it's kind of funny because that the atmosphere that you're talking about, Matt, for us, that's almost more Foxhole than it is just about like the flashbang action. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's why these pieces of art is we see it and we're like, this is Foxhole, right? Right? So it's so cool. It's really awesome.
Anyway, I just wanted to.
No, it is fun. I wanted to have. I keep telling you guys, these two. If you haven't had a chance to check the 24th, check it and keep an eye open for the 25th. That Crazy Flying Chicken is putting it up because it's gonna be really good.
Cool. We're gonna do some suggestions. We're gonna go through some suggestions from the community because we haven't done that for a while, and I thought this was a good chance. There's only two that we have time to fit into the stream, but I thought these two were, to me, funny because they're almost on very opposite ends of like the spectrum in terms of the kinds of like feature that we like to think about. So first is sort of like this suggestion on how we can improve the tech system, the factories, and research in the One World update. And this is sort of on the spectrum of like what are the deep sort of the deep issues on the gameplay side that we're trying to solve. Like how do we make Foxhole more like the vision that we want to be, right? So that's on this side of the spectrum. And I thought that this suggestion was really cool because I felt that the way that it was approached is very much the way that we would kind of approach things. Like basically the summary of this suggestion was that we separate the technology research from the blueprint side of things. So like you have to research the technology first in a tech tree, which is kind of like what we've been talking about already.
Yeah.
But the other side of it is the blueprint system, and how this suggestion works is players can build factories that on their own, the factories, they actually don't do anything. You have to stockpile them with the blueprints, and once you stockpile them with the blueprints, then you can produce the items based on the blueprints that are stockpiled there. But you define what those blueprints are. So by putting blueprints in there, you're defining what that factory is used for. It's like a blank slate, and I like that a lot because it plays into the sandbox aspect of the game. It plays into like the player agency that we want. And you know, I think if we were to actually implement something like this, there would be lots of problems that we would have to think through, and maybe something like this won't work exactly because of whatever, because of like the griefing or something else. There's always these problems that we have to think about. But I really liked how the thought process was for this suggestion, because it's very similar to what we already do. And I have to say that this did give us some ideas that we're thinking about. So I think this is really cool.
It was very useful to see something like that.
Yeah, exactly. So then on the other side of the spectrum, this other idea was sort of not on like the deep side of the gameplay, but more on like the very other end of the spectrum, which is like the usability and like the quality of life, like the quality of life aspect of the game, and simply to add a tooltip to our loading screens, or maybe not necessarily a loading screen, but you know,
something that I
just
think
like
that
in general,
just
and
more information.
And the cool thing is that there's an entire list of these that were written out, and I know there's people on our team that have really wanted to do this for a long time. I can think of one person at least who really wants to do something like this, because some people on the team, they really care about this sort of thing, and I think it's important. Just, you know, while the deep gameplay issues are always like the number one thing, but we can't lose track of this as well, right? Might not be like the highest thing on the list, but it's something that, you know, maybe eventually we'll have to think about, right?
Well, it's something that for sure, when we are looking into the more tail end of the development pipe, we want to focus on usability and user-friendly. How can we make sure that also by doing that, we don't take away from the deep?
Absolutely. So it's like right now, more the focus is on that first side of the spectrum, and then later as we go, we'll focus more on this side of the spectrum.
It's really cool. Really good suggestions.
It's really cool. Yeah. And I guess with that done, our development update is what we're going to talk about next. Basically, we like to talk about things that we are currently working on the stream. And I know, like we said at the beginning, there's one big thing we're working on, which is the One World revamp. And before I kind of talk more about it, because there's a lot that we have to say, not just now, but in the coming weeks. Just wanted to sort of like give a really quick recap of what it is, so that anyone who's new to the game, that's watching the stream, they kind of know. So in a nutshell, the One World revamp is sort of taking Foxhole as a game right now, which is a bunch of like servers, a bunch of wars, and taking all that and putting it into one unified world and one unified war. So all players are essentially, they're fighting as a part of the same war,
yes.
Instead of just fighting off on their own. So and there is some more information. If you go, maybe I'll try to post the link later, Matt, but there is a blog post about this. So if you want to read more about it, you can find out more about it. I'm not going to talk too much about it right now because we've already gone through all that, but it's just a large scale revamp of the game that we're currently working on. So yeah, so like I said, we are going to go through we're going to talk about a lot about what's going to change in the One World revamp. And first thing, before I get into any lower level details, I kind of wanted to talk more at the higher level about, like, as a player of Foxhole right now, what would you expect to kind of change at a higher level? Like, how is the game going to feel slightly different, and how is it going to stay the same, right? So that when we go into this, we're sort of all more on the same page, right? So sort of how will gameplay change in World Conquest? So World Conquest is basically the way that a war is fought in the One World revamp, right? It is basically all the regions that they're all part of the same world now, and you can walk in between them. So when fighting a war inside this World Conquest world, how is it going to feel different, right? And the first thing, I've talked about this a lot already, but the pacing is going to be different. It's going to be much slower, more gradual, and things won't happen immediately as much as it does now anymore. Like right now, a lot of stuff just kind of happens all at once, and besides the tech parts, which kind of slows things down a bit, it's sort of like within the first 2 hours of a war, you basically like you can already determine a lot about how the war is going to play out. Like, so much happens all at once, right? There's so much focus at the beginning of the war. So expect that to be slower. So expect there to be a bit more of a grind, and for things to be longer term, more stalemates, things like that, right? Second thing is more variation in the map design, right? So right now, all the regions of the world, they're all like, they aren't all the same, right? I know that's going to kill me if I say that.
This is a hard thing to explain, yeah. I think, as well. So
right. So it's one of those things where I won't say they're all the same, because we've done our best to try to make it different.
Is it fair to say, like, they all sort of follow these, like, really strict set of rules?
Exactly.
So
right.
that, like, they all feel
right
relatively similar.
Right. But we're gonna throw most of those rules out the window.
Yeah.
And we're sort of like we're gonna talk a little bit more about this later, but expect that there's gonna be a lot more variations in the maps. They're gonna look very different, and there's gonna be more different things to do. Like right now, you look at a map, you see your standard. There's like 8 towns, and your resources are kind of all in the same place. It's like extremely balanced, and you're sort of, okay, let's go to one town, and let's go to the next town, then go to the next town, then go to the next town, right? One of the things that you're going to see is it's not going to feel quite like that anymore. You're going to enter a region, and it might look very different from the last one. Maybe there's much less towns, right? Maybe there's much more other things to do. Maybe
there's no production in this entire map.
Maybe there's no production in this entire region. It's going to be very different. There's going to be different things to do, and that's another thing that you should be thinking about, that when these changes happen, a lot of what you know right now with the maps are going to change, right? And then the third thing, I didn't quite know how to put this, but the best way I can word it at the last minute was less immediate focus on a singular goal. And like that can mean a lot of things, but what I really want to say with this is that one of the things we're trying to do is like take away this focus on just trying to win the war right at the beginning, right? Like right now, you go into a game, everyone just kind of rushes as fast as possible, and you're just trying to do this one thing. You're trying to capture all the towns. You're not really doing anything else. And in the One World revamp, this might not happen right away, but our goal is to try to take some of the pressure off those first few moments. Or it's fine if you rush, right? But you literally will not be able to win on the first day, and you'll find out why in a second. But you literally will not be able to win on the first day, right? And so since you can't win on the first day, maybe your time isn't best spent just trying to go for the win condition, right? Maybe there's other things you do. Maybe rushing towards the win condition is actually
detrimental.
A detriment, right, for your strategy. And like the other thing is, right now there's just so much focus on the player counts. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to try to take away a lot of that focus. So that you don't just like jump to map and you kind of see, okay, like there's this many players on each side, because I think that's also not like a realistic thing, right? So I didn't quite know how to put this last point, but the idea is that a lot of the focus that you see now is going to change, right? So that's sort of, there's a lot more that I think will change, but these are kind of 3 points that I felt really stood out, and I just kind of wanted to be on the same page. I want you guys to be on the same page as us. So how will gameplay remain the same? I think a lot of people were concerned about this, that maybe there won't be as big of a focus on logistics, but I would say if anything, there's going to be an even bigger focus on the logistics, right? Resources, production, supply lines will all be key part of the One World revamp. So if you like logistics, it's going to get even better, or at least it'll be better in our eyes. In your eyes, maybe it'll just be a change. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't. But
people will complain.
I hope you like it. But I guess whether you like it or not, it's still going to be a focus for us, right? And then the sandbox elements, the player freedom that we have, the organic mechanics, all that stuff. We're going to try to keep that the same. We're going to try to make sure that players have lots of different options. We're going to make sure that stuff like stats are not really ever going to play
too heavily
a role in our game, at least not in the same way that stats play a role in a game like World of Warcraft, right? So none of that stuff is going to change. Obviously, working together is just the whole point of Foxhole. So that's not going to change either, right? So I sort of at a very high level things that you can expect, right? And so moving on, like I said, there's going to be, I kind of broke down all the changes that are going to be coming to One World into separate parts. So look at this almost as like maybe like 30% or something of all the things that we're going to have to say. One of the big things is there's going to be more tiered structure. So right now there are a few things that are tiered, like the walls kind of stand out as that one structure, and I think the foxholes too, right? But we're gonna add more tiers for many different reasons. One of the reasons is to support the longer war, and to make sure that there are things you can do in the short term and there's things you can do in the long term that are worthwhile, right? So that you're not always like sort of, the war is changing over time. And if you do something really quick, like we do want people to still be able to make things really quick, like certain things really quickly, and you can use that stuff, and you can already start having like a war with that stuff. But we also want people to be able to work on things that are going to take longer term, that there is a payoff for the longer term things that they're working on, and things where if you come back in like 2 days, okay, now we have something else, and that thing is going to be much stronger or something, and then now it's going to reach kind of like this, like the war is going to change, right? And tiers will be gated by the tech tree and some of the factors that we'll be talking about in the future. And here's one example of sort of where we're adding a tiered structure is the pillbox is going to have a first tier, so that at the beginning of the war you might be seeing like the pillbox on the left and like foxholes, and like the chain link fences, and then eventually later on you'll see like the heavier fences, the heavier pillbox,
Bigger
and
wall.
like the heavier foxhole, right?
Yeah.
That's one thing that is going to change that I want to highlight. Another thing is the way that bases work right now. So bases, I kind of in concept see as the outposts and the town halls as they are now in the current foxhole, right? Like this is where you can spawn. This is where your stockpile is, and this is sort of where you go back to like when you die, right?
Yeah.
And we're sort of taking that concept and we're gonna be like expanding it out, and it's gonna we're expanding in a way that's again gonna support the long-term progression of the war,
yeah.
right? So there's gonna be two types of bases. The first type is your static bases, which is pretty much like your town halls now, right? But except it's not gonna start as a town hall. It's gonna start at two lower tier structures first, right? So you have a garrison camp, a garrison base, and then you get a town hall. And basically these static bases, they're built either at towns or garrisonable locations. And how this is going to change is rather than having like towns all over the place, which is not realistic, and something that you really didn't like, Matt, because it was a crutch in sort of making maps. There's going to be much fewer towns, but there's going to be a lot of places that are, I guess I'm going to be careful in saying this, they're like towns as they are now, but they're much smaller places, less significant, but you can still build a base there and it will function like a base.
There's like a reason to be there.
There's a reason to be there, but it might not be themed as a town. It could be a farm, it can be a little village.
It can be just like a factory, like an industrial little complex. Like
Right.
It doesn't. It could be a tower. Who knows? Like whatever like concepts that we come up with, right?
Exactly it, and that kind of goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, how things are going to change. Is they want to make sure that the map design is more varied, right? There's more layers. I think was the word that you used, Matt. Is that we want to make sure that there's more layers. There's more layers of depth to how these maps play out, right? And so one specific detail is the town hall can only be built at town specifically. So the upgrade path sort of it will end after the second tier at the garrisonable locations, right?
I think to just sit on that for a second, like that makes towns a very specific type of location, as opposed to there are other smaller locations that you can garrison, but you may not be building a town hall. They're not going to function as a town.
So not everything can be
turned into town.
Can be fully built, right? And then the winning conditions. This is a big thing that it's going to change. That all towns in the world are claimed and have a town hall. That's how you win. But what that means essentially is that you don't necessarily need to capture each and every one of these bases, right? You only need to capture and claim the towns. And then another detail here is that you know how I was saying earlier that you can't win the war in a single day because it's going to take time. It's going to take time. It's going to take time to like upgrade these, and this is actual long time, right?
When you say time, you're
real
saying
time.
that real time now is a factor on how
which
soon
means,
you can act.
Exactly. So it's not good enough to just rush all at once. You have to hold these places. You have to like upgrade them. You have to like defend them. And you know this is also going to change things in another way. Is that if you just capture something and you leave it alone at the first tier, it can be wiped out like fairly easily, right? Because it'll be much more weak than a tier 3 town hall, right?
Yep.
So expect that to sort of change the formula much, and we're excited to see how that's going to play out. And the other type of base is your forward bases. So it's going to kind of work with the same type of rules, except obviously it's not part of the win condition. You have your 3 tiers of forward bases, but again, if you want to get to the highest tier, you have to like defend it. You have to hold down that spot. You have to defend it. You have to get to the point. Like the one of the big motivations of this is that one thing that we see in Foxhole now is that there isn't a whole lot of, the stakes aren't high because the moment you capture a town, you get so much from doing so little, right?
Yeah.
What we want to make sure is that the most significant structures in the game, the ones with the high stakes, are the ones you actually spent time to like invest in, not something that you just sort of built in like 5 seconds, right?
So there's a reasoning for you to actually spend time. They give a huge advantage, but on the other hand, it's such a time and resources investment that if you lose is also a big deal.
It's a big deal. The stakes are high,
exactly.
Right? Which is one of the things that we care a whole lot about. So here, sort of, I kind of mentioned this already, that upgrading takes time, so rushing necessarily won't be the best strategy. Best strategy anymore. And here, sort of like you can see pictures of how your static base is going to progress. And in this case, it's a town, so you can upgrade it all the way to the 3rd tier. So
it's exciting stuff.
It's exciting.
It's really different.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how it plays out, and also is like iterated on, because I think that's always an important part. Is
which we'll talk more about soon. There's a lot. We're not finished yet today.
Here's the thing that they don't realize is that this is such like the tip of the iceberg on the stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, I think what we've talked about so far in this stream is probably around like 10 to 15% of the things that are going to change. So we weren't kidding when we said things are changing, right?
Yeah, people are asking us to go into more detail. There's lots of time for this. We're still working on it. You're going to get more.
Yeah.
And I think maybe we skipped something, but
did we skip something?
We might have, or maybe we didn't.
Is there something?
Maybe that is it, because there's so much I lost track of it. But why don't you talk a little bit about how we're going to work on the maps and which ones are going to change first and what will eventually change?
Yeah. Right? So I mean, I think the very, very first version that we'll see will like not look too different right out of the gate. But there are 2 maps that you might have realized haven't really been played much, and that's Far North Coast and Umber Wildwood. And the reason for that is I think both maps in the sort of just the single map playstyle that we have right now were kind of flawed and didn't really work the way that we had sort of anticipated. And also they happen to be in really good locations for us to experiment with some of these ideas that we're talking about. So Far North Coast is first, and that's something I've been working on for a little while, which is why you won't see Far North Coast the way it was ever again. I don't think.
Last Saturday was
the last time you're going to see it that way. Dramatic changes are coming to that map. It will not even resemble the way it was before. I think there'll be some areas that look similar, but the whole flow of the game is going to change. So that map is completely different now. Similarly, we're going to tackle Umber Wildwood, and then we're going to tackle the 9th map. Far North Coast has been interesting and challenging to revamp, I would say, given that there's a lot of unanswered questions and things that we have to figure out. And, you know, one of the things that we were talking about before was the abundance of towns. Something that really bothered me in the game is if you sort of averaged out all the towns for the 9 maps, I think we counted like something like 96 towns.
Roughly,
right? Something like
not exactly that, but
something like that. It was like a lot of towns that, like, I was always kind of like frustrated by the idea that like down the road, like 1 block away is an entirely like new town. It always felt really weird to me. So I'm sort of glad that we're changing that, and the major like town locations will be more sort of realistically placed and realistically spread out, and
which also allows you as a map designer to make sure that each location is more visually striking and singular.
Yeah, I mean, having to deal with 20-something maps or towns is a lot easier and more like gives me more time than having to deal with like 90-something. But that's not to say like you're gonna have a whole bunch of empty space, because
you can be stationed at a lot of places.
You can be stationed at
just
all
as
sorts
much
of
as
different places. Like there's going to be as many points of interest as sort of it's a term I've been throwing around. So these garrisonable locations or points of interest that may have, you know, more resources or a factory or something, like there's going to be lots to see and do. It's not just going to be like stuff out in the middle of a field every time or something. It's just they're not going to be strictly these towns that you are sort of come to know.
And where that kind of leaves us some room is that the towns that we do have, we can focus more on them and make
exactly,
them more
and really make them like one of my big goals has always been, or well, our big goals, it's something you've told me from day one, make it feel natural, like as natural as possible. So that's what we're going to like lean into, trying to make things feel a little bit more natural. And at first it's gonna feel kind of similar to the way the game is now, but you'll see it slowly start to like evolve and shift over this other direction. I think that's important to note, is it's not gonna be like a snap our fingers and then it's done. And you probably want to talk about just the process of like the other maps as well, because right away the other maps aren't going to change as dramatically, but they will eventually.
Yeah, so there is going to be a period where the other maps are going to be much like they are now, but we're going to slowly evolve them, and eventually the goal is that we're going to go through every map, and the mainland is just going to look, I imagine, a couple of months away, it'll just look very different from this now. And we also have other big plans that not really talking much about right now, but we do want to revamp towns even beyond what Matt has talked about more comprehensively in the future. It's one of the big goals we have on our list this year, right? So
and like just to elaborate on that just a touch, it's like right now my big criticisms over the towns, which I like assemble and design, is that they are sort of all kind of the same in terms of just like the features available. Like sometimes one will have some elevation or something like that, but I think what we'd really like to have is really dynamic things happening in towns, like in the future, like in the real world. Like most two cities are very different in any given like location, and I think that's really important. Like there's always like an identity and all that stuff. So
cool.
I don't want to elaborate too much more on that, because I can't guarantee
that for
anything.
A whole other stream in the future, hopefully. The town revamp stream hopefully is going to happen at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on, so just want to talk about, so I think this is really important. We've talked about some of the stuff that we're going to do. I do want to talk about the process, about how we're working on this, how we're going to roll it out, and what's going to happen is first we are going to start by releasing a series of experimental versions for One World, and these will be prototypes, much like One World prototypes that we had previously. And these experimental versions will coexist with the game that you see now, right? So there's a fallback plan if we roll out this thing and everything falls apart on the first day because so much thing is changing, it's really complicated. We can, everyone can still go play Foxhole as it works now, right? And this is this wasn't entirely in simple choice for us. We had thought about some other approaches, like maybe we just totally flip the game all at once, or maybe we develop a separate like app, and then we sort of work on both at the same time. But at the end of the day, we felt like this was the best approach because we can keep all the players all in the same app.
Nobody need to get a new thing. Right?
Exactly, and we can give people an option. They can still play the current game if they want to, and there's a fallback plan if things don't work out at the beginning, because it's it's not going to be as stable as we necessarily want it to be. And doing the experimental versions will also allow us to roll things out faster, so you guys will be able to see parts of this sooner. You won't see the full picture at the beginning, right? I just want to stress this, that we will be testing various parts of the One World revamp. So don't click the play button on the first day and be like, this is One World. No, it's not. It's just going to be one part of One World that'll be missing a lot of features, and we're probably going to say what's there and what's not there. And then eventually, once these experimental versions are stable enough, which means kind of, more or less the fundamentals are in place. It's not finished. It's not 1.0. We're still going to be changing things, but it's stable enough that we're confident that we can swap the old game out and just have the new game there. We're going to replace the existing game, and then One World will be kind of the only way you can play Foxhole at that point in time, right? And then, so some important things to expect out of the process. I think this is one of the most important parts of this whole stream. I want to get this point across, is that One World is going to be like an evolving thing over time, right? And like I just said, don't play if you want something that is going to blow your mind, don't even play the first version of it. Just wait. I know it's gonna be hard, but literally just wait for like the stable version, and then maybe you'll be much happier, right? If you want to play the first version, you need to go in there with the expectation that, okay, this is some of the groundwork. This is some of the stuff that we're working on. So it's very, very important that you understand that. And if there is something to be like excited about, be excited about the process, right? If you want to be part of this, be excited about the process. Be excited about playing the first one. Be excited about being able to play it. And
all the versions and seeing what's going on and
seeing what's changed, and you can tell us what you think is not working. We can make things better. The feedback process. If you're excited about that, then I think this is going to be a cool process for you to be a part of. But again, if you're sort of wanting the perfect version of it, then you should kind of wait on it, right?
So this is something I say all the time, and I say to people all the time who contact me on Discord and stuff. And I think this is really important. I said this to you just over lunch. Yeah. I think it's really cool because as an early access game, we're actually like in front of you developing the game. You guys get to see every piece of the puzzle. And I think that's really cool. And I think that's really exciting. And you guys are literally seeing how we're shifting our game design philosophies into something new. And I think that happens with every game all the time. So like, it's just cool that you guys get to see it. And I think that's a really exciting thing to be a part of. Personally.
Yep.
Awesome. And so I already talked about this enough, so I won't say anything more about it. But you'll hear more about this next week.
Right? There's more things coming on both the dev blog and the next dev stream.
Yeah.
There's more details on the One World, more features and explanations of what are the things that you guys are probably gonna have questions and how we're gonna deal with things. We're gonna be rolling them out as we develop them, as we have them more ready. We don't want to also give like a cop-out answer while things are not perfect.
But
yeah,
that's what we always do anyways.
What is it? Something new?
So are we ready for Q&A then?
Yes.
All right, so guys, get your questions coming. I know that there's already been a couple of questions. One of the things that did come up which I'll ask right now, is will it require town halls in all the towns in order to capture them?
Will we require town halls?
Like the town hall tier in order to capture
Yes.
them?
Yes. And that is the change that we're talking about.
So you can't just put a garrison building and be like, we won. You have to hold it until you have a town hall.
Yeah.
Which is why rushing might be good, might be bad, but it's going to be a choice.
Right, because
it's gonna be
the more you spread yourself thin, the harder it is going to be to hold everything.
Yeah.
Right, and then you end up wasting money.
Particularly because now there are going to be other places in the map that maybe they're not as important tactically to win the game right away, but they could bring up different potential for your team.
And that's the kind of trade-off that I really want to see. I really, really am interested in having all these different things you can try at the beginning.
Absolutely.
Of the right? So.
There's a whole bunch of questions. I have not yet picked one, so I'm just going to say a random one. How many skirmish maps are we expecting roughly in One World?
So there's no number that's set yet, and I think in the earlier experimental versions, skirmish will not be a part of at least the first version
of One World.
But we will be working on them eventually. I don't have a count, but there'll be more than two, right? There's definitely going to be a third one, and then beyond that, I think we just have to wait and see how some of this other stuff plays out, because the amount of resources and time that we have to work on maps
that was a Freudian slip
is limited, and obviously the mainland conquest is going to be where the top priority is, right? So
also, if he's talking about like how many matches can happen at the same time.
He's talking about matches?
No, he was talking about like physical maps.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you build 2 town halls in one town?
No.
No.
While I look for like a really interesting question, someone asked, how did you enjoy your holidays?
Mine was awesome. I was out of the country, so for me it was fantastic.
Yeah. I was out of the country for a short while, and then I got terribly sick, which was
so good, right?
Which was, you know what? The good thing about, if there is one thing that I have to be kind of like positive about, is that when you're sick, you can kind of be like, okay, well, I'm sick. I literally can't do anything right now, so I'm just gonna relax and not do anything. It's the only time that you can really relax without like worrying about Because if you're on holidays and you're healthy, you're like, oh, maybe I should go check on Foxhole and make sure everything is.
I had no internet, so for me it was fantastic. I could not even check if anyone.
So it's sort of like being sick is your excuse to sit back and be like, I'm just gonna sit down and like watch some TV or something for once. But
I went home for the holidays and then I came back and got really sick.
As per usual.
And that happens every January. I don't know what the problem is, but I grew this beard as well.
All the germs now. You gotta get used to them. You gotta get used to them.
And I just played video games while I was sick on the couch. It was all right, I guess. I wish I wasn't sick.
There's an advantage of being sick because you get to do more of that stuff.
Are there any modifiers? This comes from Fallen Banner. I'm going to continue to read the names because I haven't been doing that. Are there any modifiers from war games that you're seriously considering adding to the rest of the game? Or I'm going to also addendum that and say, have we added to the game?
Yeah, so that's a very good question.
We're going to talk about...
So there are two, so I'll say I won't really spend too much more time explaining any more actual features, but I will say that the Town Fortress modifier has had some influence on how things are going to change, as well as the Refinery modifier.
Yeah.
Smithin asks, is the player base large enough to split into one world and classic? And I think that's an important question to clarify.
So yeah, I know it's a very good question, and we're thinking about that too. It may not, and one of the possible outcomes is that most people will just switch over to one world off the bat, because I know a lot of people are just waiting for it, right? And then if that happens, then we can the nice thing about having both is that regardless of which scenario happens, we can support it all, which is why I think we sort of chose this approach, even though it's actually much harder on how we make things, because we have to support both, right? And that's sort of probably adding, 20-30% of work to support both the old and the new, but it allows us to take that particular situation and then we can make a call at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, if everyone's just playing one world and having fun with it, maybe we switch over sooner, and then we just make sure that the expectation is set correctly. But in the other case, if some people are playing a Foxhole Classic, then we can maybe keep that around for a little longer. But I think another thing that too is that there's a lot of people, we don't know for sure, but I think I get a suspicion that a lot of people are actually not playing Foxhole right now because they're waiting for the One World revamp.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see as well.
Anecdotally, I've seen people say that on forums and stuff.
So it's interesting to see what's going to happen then. And another sort of third factor there is that the first version, experimental version, is only going to have 6 regions, not 9, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not going to be huge, right? It's going to be much bigger than any of the World Conquests we've played in the past. So that's kind of cool. But it's not going to be its full form, right? So there might just be a limited number of slots. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, right?
Peacekeeper asks another important question regarding World Conquest or One World. When transferring from one zone or map, is the transition going to be walking into a ghost wall that currently exists with a map be loaded and then or cut into a section that load, or Minecraft chunk loading? How are we going to transfer between maps?
If you ask a lot of people from the community that have been around since the pre-alpha, they will give you a solid answer, because it's going to work largely like that at the beginning, which is that you just walk up to the edge of the map, the screen will fade dark, and then it'll load for a split moment, and then the screen will fade back, and then you'll be in the neighboring map at the same place that you were.
An equivalent location.
I'm explaining this very extremely poorly, but on the corresponding road that you took, let's just say, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So
if you're coming from the left, you're going to be on the right side.
And the roads connect.
Yeah.
So as of right now, you can only travel on roads. So when you follow the road, you'll end up on the proper road on the other side. So if you go from Deadlands to on the shore, you will connect on the left side of Inner Shore. And it's essentially going into a ghost wall, and then you travel, and then the other map loads. We'd love to have it all stitched together. I think that'd be.
But I think there's a different process of what we have right now for our system. So.
Will the teams be ever asymmetric? Colonial tanks do more damage but are slower. Wardens are more agile but take more fuel, etc., etc. This comes from Kappa the 11th.
So I think that I really like that idea, but I almost feel like before we even try to tackle that, there's so many other things we have to get right first, and just adding that into the mix at this point in time is just going to complicate the problem we're trying to solve right now, right? But I think that, like we talked about this before, we're not against it, and we do think that would bring more like interesting things to each faction. But you know, it's trying to. It's not the time. It's not the time to try to tackle that one right now. But it's cool. I think
there will be a time in development where like a lot of content is produced, and by content I mean weapons and stuff.
And then when that comes, we can do more a different kind of balancing than what we're doing right now. Right now, we're just making sure that the game works for both factions without much hitch.
Exactly.
My head is square asks, are you still planning on making vehicle damage modular?
By modular you mean on like localized?
I assume.
Okay.
Well, it already exists.
That exists on the tanks already.
Yeah.
We just haven't taken that particular feature and put it on the other vehicles yet, but that 100% is already happening on the tanks.
I think if anything, we could improve the visualization of that.
Maybe that's what he's mentioning?
Potentially, like you take off the wheels and then the
Yeah.
tank falls off.
Oh, okay, okay. I see.
Maybe? I don't know.
Right.
We don't have any plans for that right now.
Yeah.
Although the damage is localized. Like receives more damage from the back than from the front or things like that.
I don't know why this question's been asked 1,000 times this stream.
But is it on the FAQ or no?
I think it is, but people posted it and the question's still getting asked, so let's just answer it.
Okay.
When are planes coming?
Planes?
Read the FAQ. But in all seriousness, the FAQ, for anyone who's new here, does answer a lot of questions that usually come up, so it can be very helpful. You know, the short answer is that planes are really like exciting to us, but there's no plans right now, at least, to be working on that. I know HPs love the idea.
Oh man, yeah.
Right.
And I know some people hate it.
Killer89 asked, will you be able to see the full map and not just the zone you're in?
Oh.
Well,
I asked that question on
okay,
purpose.
So I'm really excited to answer this question, but I can't answer it yet.
Okay.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great answer, man.
Really good answer. Since there's not too many questions right now,
Can we make this the last one?
We're gonna make this the last one.
There's one more thing we do have to talk about.
Yep.
In the stream.
So Luke Pop asks, just to clarify, you said you need a town hall to capture a town. How will that be implemented? And the same question was asked earlier, and he said, will you be unable to use the factories if you have a garrison base instead? And I think it's worth noting that like towns they're just not going to be the same as they are currently implemented.
Yeah.
So we'll have more information about that soon. But just when you visualize these towns in this new one world, they're not going to be quite the same as you know them in terms of like their functionality.
Visually, some of them might be.
Visually, they may look really similar,
Yeah.
but for now, but in terms of just function, they may act a little differently. So just expect that. So we have one last thing to talk about. It's really exciting. I'm gonna let Mark take it.
Or rather, you HP.
Oh yeah.
HP can take it too. That's fine.
Yeah. So it's something really cool that we want to do for you guys. Is that we are actually starting an art contest.
Contest.
Yeah.
To be clear, I guess to be clear, it's like a creative contest because it's written and art.
It's art, exactly, in both categories, both written and visual. So I know that you guys are creating such amazing pieces of content in both realms. You know, I don't know which one is the word. Realms. Okay, thank you. And we wanted to actually see what we can do with that. What are the best things that you guys can come up with? So this is a simple contest. There's going to be one category, which is a visual one, in which you can create a piece of medium digitally, or anyway, it's going to be like end up to being a 2D in the end. There are some more rules that are going to be in this URL on the bottom there. There's also the written category, in which you create a piece of fiction, either poetry or a short narrative, something like that. Short story.
Anything, yeah.
And there are gonna be 6 winners in total. The top 3 of both categories are gonna receive a Foxhole T-shirt, a Foxhole poster that we're gonna sign. If you guys want our scribbles on top of your poster, and a Steam key that you can use for yourself or to give it for a friend if you want. But the overall winner of the contest will be along these, the T-shirt, the poster, and the Steam key, we also have a chance to work with us to create a little bit of lore, particularly with Matt. Most likely is going to be the one realming that. Sorry.
Right.
Helming in this case.
I think some people have been really excited about that.
Yeah. So flex your creative muscles and see and show us what you can do, and then you get a chance to talk to us and actually etch a little bit of the Foxhole history into the game. How cool is that, man?
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the contest will start on January 9. You can submit until March 9. There are more rules. All the rules are in the URL underneath, foxholegame.com/contest. You can see all the details and how to submit. Just be careful on how you submit. There are some like very specific parameters that we want them just for our sanity, so we can actually be able to judge. And not all of us, but most likely a lot of us are gonna be the ones judging it. I think this is just something fun that we wanted you guys to do, and we wanted to see what you can do. And I know that a lot of the people in our community were really excited to do some sort of contest. So we're just, we just want to give you some simple prizes, something fun.
Great.
Someone asked, does the written part need to be in English? Yes, it does, because we need to be able to read it.
Yeah, well,
guys, we need to be able to judge it.
We need to be able to judge it, exactly.
So one person can't judge it. So
if it was in Portuguese, I could judge it, but I alone are not the only judge.
Yeah. So otherwise, it wouldn't be a problem. But
yeah.
Unfortunately,
unless you're okay with us judging through Google Translate, but I don't think that actually is good.
That's going to give you the right stuff. But anyway,
can it be 3D? Yes, it can be 3D. Can be 2D or any other sort of.
Read the link very carefully for rules and regulations, because we do have very specific requirements, and if they're not followed, then your entry won't be considered.
So I guess that last question about 3D, and it says two-dimensional. The two-dimensional is just the format.
The image. It's gonna be the image that is gonna submit.
But if someone made a 3D render or something.
Yeah, that could.
Cool. You can't submit a sketch fab link. You have to submit a 2D image.
Yes.
So just to be clear.
Cool. It's exciting.
It's pretty cool, actually. I'm really excited about this.
I'm super excited about it too. I think we'll get some really cool stuff. Yeah. But once again, thank you guys so much for coming and hanging out and listening to us talk about the exciting future of Foxhole, and we'll have more for you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and final, as always, watch the community stream that happens on the Thursday on the week's opposite of the Devstream. Matt's going to paste the link. We do this every time, and I think that is over for real.
No, I have one thing.
Yeah, one more.
If you were watching this on YouTube, remember to catch us usually a few days earlier than what you're seeing this. It's on Tuesdays, every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST.
Yes.
EST.
You can watch it live.
That you can watch it live and ask the questions for the Q&A portion. The link is going to be on screen in here somewhere.
And like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, yeah, no, if you want to. That we don't monetize the video, so that actually doesn't. Anyway, thank you guys. I think no, that's all.
I think so.
I think we are. See you guys in 2 weeks.
See ya.
See you guys.